The scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine was Alara Vance's truest companion. It clung to her hands, permeated her small cottage, and whispered from the folds of her worn gardening apron. Her home, nestled at the very edge of Oakhaven, a village so quaint it felt plucked from a storybook, was a sanctuary of green. Every window framed a riot of color, honeysuckle clambering up trellises, petunias spilling from window boxes, and the rich, velvety darkness of her prized heirloom roses. Alara herself was a creature of quiet beauty, much like the delicate petals she tended. Her hair, the color of rich loam after a spring rain, was usually braided or pulled back, escaping in soft tendrils around a face that held the gentle wisdom of someone who listened more than she spoke. Her eyes, the shade of moss after a long drought, held a lingering wistfulness, a shadow of dreams deferred. At 32, she had built a life around her passion, running a small, beloved floral design studio called The Petal and Vine from a converted shed beside her cottage. It was a good life, a peaceful life, but sometimes, especially on quiet evenings when the last rays of sun painted the sky in hues of apricot and rose, a silent ache would bloom in her heart, a longing for something more than just beauty observed, something felt deeply and irrevocably. Tonight, the air was unusually still, carrying the promise of a crisp autumn. Alara sat on her porch swing, a cup of chamomile tea warming her hands, watching the twilight deepen. The whispering peaks, the range of mountains that cradled Oakhaven, stood sentinel against the fading light, their rugged profiles softening to silhouettes. Local folklore claimed the peaks held ancient secrets, whispered on the wind, secrets of hidden springs, forgotten pathways, and flora found nowhere else on Earth. Alara, a botanist by training and a romantic by nature, knew many of these tales by heart. But there was one above all others that had captured her imagination since childhood, the legend of the crimson velvet rose. It wasn't just any rose. The crimson velvet was said to be a flower of unparalleled beauty and rarity, its petals so deeply, darkly crimson they appeared almost black in certain lights, their texture like the finest velvet. It bloomed only once every 7 years, and only, so the stories went, in a specific secluded part of the Whispering Peaks known as the Viridian Vale. The legend held that the bloom was not only stunning but possessed an almost magical quality. To witness it was to be granted profound insight into the nature of true, enduring love. Some said it brought lovers together, others that it healed broken hearts, but all agreed it was a sign of destiny. Alara had spent years, in her youth, poring over old maps, hiking forgotten trails, and researching obscure botanical texts, all in the hope of finding the Viridian Vale and seeing the crimson velvet. She'd always been unsuccessful. The veil remained elusive, a beautiful myth. Now, she was older, perhaps a little wiser, and had learned to temper her youthful idealism with the practicalities of life. Still, a part of her, the quiet, dreaming part, never truly let go of the legend. This year, according to the old lunar calendars she kept tucked away, was a crimson velvet year. The next full moon, a mere week away, was the prophesied time. A shiver, not entirely of cold, traced its way down her spine. The following morning dawned with a briskness that promised autumn's full arrival. Alara was pruning her climbing roses, their thorns pricking her gloved hands, when a vehicle she didn't recognize rumbled down the narrow lane leading to her cottage. It was an older model Land Rover, dust-caked and clearly well-traveled, its dark green paint faded by sun and time. It pulled to a stop just past her gate, and the driver's door opened. A man unfolded himself from the driver's seat, a tall, lean figure whose presence seemed to ripple the quiet morning air. He had the kind of unruly dark hair that looked as though it had been perpetually windswept, and eyes the color of warm amber, intelligent and keenly observant. A faint stubble shadowed his jaw, adding to his rugged charm. He wore practical hiking boots, faded jeans, and a well-worn leather jacket that looked like it had seen as many miles as his vehicle. He carried a camera bag slung over one shoulder, a large, professional-looking lens poking out. Alara, usually unflustered, felt a distinct flutter in her chest. Strangers weren't common on her lane, especially not ones who looked like they'd just stepped out of an adventure novel. She straightened up, pruning shears still in hand, a faint flush rising on her cheeks. The man caught her gaze and offered a smile that was both disarming and utterly captivating. It reached his eyes, crinkling the corners, and suddenly the quiet morning felt charged with something new. Something Unexpected. "Good morning," he called out, his voice a pleasant baritone, carrying easily across the small distance. "I hope I haven't stumbled into private territory. The GPS signal is a bit artistic out here." Elara managed a small, polite smile back. "You're on my property, but it's not a problem. Just keep an eye out for rogue rose thorns." She gestured vaguely at the thorny bush. He chuckled, a rich, warm sound. "Noted. I'm Reese Kalen. I'm looking for the owner of the Petal and Vine." He glanced at the discreet, hand-painted sign near her cottage entrance. "That would be me," Elara replied, a hint of surprise in her voice. "Elara Vance, can I help you, Mr. Kalen?" Reese walked closer, moving with an easy grace that suggested an affinity for the outdoors. He stopped a respectful distance from her, his gaze sweeping over her cottage, her abundant garden, and then, lingeringly, back to her. "Elara Vance. It's a beautiful name. And your garden, it's breathtaking. I'm a photographer, specializing in natural landscapes and unique flora. I heard whispers in town about a renowned local botanist, someone with an extraordinary touch with plants, and a legendary knowledge of the area's hidden gems." Elara felt her cheeks warm further. She wasn't used to such direct compliments, especially from such a striking stranger. "Oh, well, I just love what I do. And Oak Haven certainly has its share of hidden gems." She paused, then, "What kind of unique flora are you interested in specifically?" Ria's amber eyes gleamed with an almost boyish excitement. He shifted his camera bag, pulling out a small, leather-bound notebook and a well-worn map. "I'm on a bit of a pilgrimage, you could say. I've been researching an old legend, one that speaks of a flower of extraordinary beauty, a rose, specifically. The crimson velvet." He watched her closely, a knowing glint in his eyes. "And the Viridian veil." Elara's breath hitched. She stared at him, her pruning shears momentarily forgotten. This was unexpected. Very unexpected. She had guarded that particular fascination closely, sharing it with no one in years. "You know about the crimson velvet?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I do," Reese confirmed, his smile softening. "My grandmother, bless her adventurous heart, was a botanist too. She left me her journals. She wrote extensively about Oak Haven, about the Whispering Peaks, and about the legend of the crimson velvet. She was convinced it was real, and she spent years trying to find it. Never did as far as I know, but her notes are incredibly detailed. She even charted the predicted bloom cycle based on old folklore and astronomical observation." He tapped his notebook. "This year, according to her calculations, is the year." Elara felt a strange mix of disbelief and exhilaration. It was as if a piece of her deepest, most private dream had suddenly manifested in the form of this captivating stranger. "My goodness," she murmured, truly astonished. I've also followed the legend. Since I was a child, I've looked for the Viridian veil for years." "So I heard," Reese said, his gaze warm and direct. "The folks down at the Oak Haven General Store, bless their gossipy hearts, pointed me in your direction. Said if anyone knew anything about rare flowers and hidden places, it would be Elara Vance. They weren't wrong, it seems." Elara found herself smiling genuinely, a rare, open smile that transformed her face. "Well, they weren't entirely wrong. I know the legends, I know the history. But the veil itself, it's always eluded me. It's supposed to be incredibly difficult to find, almost as if it chooses who it reveals itself to." "Exactly what my grandmother's journals indicated," Reese agreed. "She spoke of specific landmarks, celestial alignments, even the particular quality of light on the day of the bloom. And she always stressed the importance of knowing the local flora and fauna, the subtle signs that only a true expert would recognize." He paused, his amber eyes serious. "Which brings me back to you, Elara. I was hoping, perhaps you'd be willing to share your expertise. Maybe even, dare I hope, join me in a search." The proposition hung in the air, audacious and thrilling. Elara hadn't considered actively searching again in years. She had resigned herself to the idea that the crimson velvet was a beautiful dream, best left undisturbed in the realm of myth. But now, with Reese Kalen standing before her, radiating an infectious enthusiasm and holding a link to her own childhood fascination, the dream felt suddenly tantalizingly real. "Join you?" she repeated, a little breathlessly. "Yes, I have my grandmother's maps, her observations, my camera gear. But I lack the intimate knowledge of these mountains, the nuanced understanding of the local ecosystem, the very language of the plants themselves that I imagine you possess. And frankly, he added with a charming, self-deprecating shrug, I'm not entirely sure I wouldn't get hopelessly lost without a seasoned guide. Elara considered him, really considered him. He seemed sincere, his eyes alight with genuine curiosity and respect, not just the fleeting interest of a tourist. There was an honesty about him that was appealing. And the thought of finally pursuing this elusive dream, not alone, but with someone who understood its allure, someone who believed, it stirred something deep within her. The full moon is in a week, she said, almost to herself. Exactly, Rhys affirmed, stepping a little closer. I've scouted some initial areas based on my grandmother's descriptions, but nothing definitive. Time is of the essence. What do you say, Elara Vance? Shall we try to find the Viridian Veil and witness the crimson velvet together? His gaze was intense, hopeful, and something else. A spark of connection that felt immediate and undeniable. It was a crazy idea, she knew. She barely knew this man. Yet, a sense of adventure, long dormant, began to unfurl within her. It felt right, somehow. Come inside, she said, making a decision. I'll make some tea, and you can show me your grandmother's journals. A broad, genuine smile lit up Rhys's face. Lead the way, Elara. Inside her cozy cottage, filled with the comforting scent of herbs and old books, Elara found herself surprisingly at ease with Rhys. He unfolded ancient, brittle maps on her kitchen table, his grandmother's meticulous handwriting filling the margins. The journals, bound in faded leather, were a treasure trove of botanical sketches, observations, and personal reflections, all detailing the elusive crimson velvet. She called it the heart of the mountains, Rhys explained, tracing a finger over a faded drawing of a rose. Believed it was a symbol of pure, unconditional love. She was a bit of a romantic like that. He glanced up at Elara, a soft smile on his lips. Sounds like you might have understood her. Elara found herself nodding. I think I would have. The idea that something so profoundly beautiful and rare exists, and only reveals itself under such specific conditions. It's captivating. They spent the better part of the morning poring over the materials. Rhys's grandmother, Evelyn Kalin, had been remarkably thorough. She had cross-referenced local legends with astronomical data, geological surveys, and even old settler diaries. Her note suggested the Viridian Veil was not just a secluded spot, but one that was subtly hidden, almost camouflaged by its surroundings, requiring a keen eye to discern the natural cues. She talks about a whispering spring and a sentinel stone, Rhys pointed out, tapping a spot on a hand-drawn map, and a specific alignment of 3 peaks, forming a V shape, visible only from a certain vantage point at dawn on the day of the bloom. Elara leaned closer, her mind already racing with possibilities. The Crimson V, she murmured, connecting it to the name given to the flower. It makes sense. The shape of the valley, perhaps, or the way the peaks frame it. Exactly, Rhys agreed, his arm brushing hers as he leaned in, sending a small jolt through her. Neither of them acknowledged it, but the air between them felt a little thicker, a little more charged. They mapped out potential routes, discussing the challenges of the terrain. Elara contributed her knowledge of the local flora and fauna, identifying specific tree types and moss patterns that Evelyn had mentioned as indicators. Rhys, in turn, shared his experience with navigating rugged landscapes and his understanding of light and shadow, crucial for spotting elusive landmarks. We'll need to leave at least a day before the full moon, Elara calculated. To make sure we can reach the base of the peaks and set up camp, then we'd need to ascend early on the morning of the bloom. Rhys nodded, his eyes bright with excitement. I have all the camping gear. My Land Rover can handle most of the rough terrain, but the last stretch will definitely be on foot. As they planned, a comfortable camaraderie began to bloom between them. Rhys was easy to talk to, a good listener, and his enthusiasm was infectious. Elara, who usually found social interactions a little draining, felt energized by his presence. She found herself opening up, sharing her own childhood dreams of the crimson velvet, the years she'd spent searching, and the quiet resignation that had followed. Rhys listened attentively, his gaze warm and understanding. It's never too late to chase a dream, Elara, he said softly, his amber eyes holding hers. Especially one as beautiful as this. His words resonated deep within her, stirring long-buried hopes. It had been a long time since anyone had looked at her with such earnest belief, such genuine encouragement. As the afternoon wore on, the sky outside began to cloud over, a soft rain beginning to patter against the window panes. "Looks like we might have some weather moving in," Alara observed, glancing out. "That could make the climb tricky." "Adds to the adventure," Reese said, undeterred. "And maybe it's just what the crimson velvet needs. My grandmother's notes mention a cleansing rain often precedes the bloom, washing the air clean for the perfect light." Alara smiled, shaking her head slightly. "You're an optimist, Mr. Kalen." "Reese," he corrected gently. "And when you're chasing legends, a little optimism goes a long way, Alara." They continued to refine their plan, marking potential campsites, estimating travel times, and discussing supplies. By the time the last light faded from the sky, casting long shadows across the kitchen, they had a tentative itinerary. "We'll meet here first thing in the morning, 2 days from now," Alara said, pointing to a date on her kitchen calendar. "That should give us enough time to prepare, and a full day to make the drive and hike to the base camp." "Perfect," Reese agreed, gathering his maps and journals. He paused at the door, turning back to her. "Thank you, Alara. Seriously. This means a lot to me. To be able to finish what my grandmother started, and with someone who shares her passion. It's more than I could have hoped for." "Thank you, Reese," Alara replied, her voice soft. "It means a lot to me too, to finally pursue this again, after all these years. It feels right." Their eyes met again, and this time, the spark was unmistakable. A quiet current of attraction humming between them. It was more than just shared passion for a mythical flower. It was a connection that promised something deeper, something beautiful, unfolding slowly like the petals of a rare bloom. As Reese drove away, his Land Rover kicking up a fine spray of rain, Alara stood on her porch, watching until the taillights disappeared into the deepening twilight. The air was cool now, carrying the fresh, clean scent of rain and earth. The quiet ache in her heart had lessened, replaced by a gentle hum of anticipation. The legend of the crimson velvet had always been about love, about destiny. And now, as she prepared to embark on this unexpected journey with a charming stranger, Alara wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, the legend was about to weave its magic in more ways than one. The Viridian Veil awaited, and with it, the promise of the crimson velvet, and a new, unforeseen chapter in her own story. The Viridian Veil awaited, and with it, the promise of the crimson velvet, and a new, unforeseen chapter in her own story. The journey began with the soft clip-clop of hooves on a winding dirt path, the air still cool and crisp with the lingering kiss of dawn. Alara found herself seated beside the charming stranger in a small, sturdy carriage, its polished wood gleaming faintly in the nascent light. He had introduced himself as Lion, his voice a low, melodious baritone that seemed to resonate with the quiet beauty of the morning. His eyes, the color of warm honey, held a spark of adventure, yet met hers with an unhurried kindness that put her instantly at ease. "A long road ahead," Lion remarked, his gaze sweeping over the undulating hills that stretched before them, cloaked in mist. "But a beautiful one, I hope." Alara smiled, a genuine, unforced expression that felt lighter than any she'd worn in months. "I've never traveled far from home. The closest I've come to adventure is within the pages of a book." Lion chuckled, a warm, resonant sound. "And what adventures have those pages held for you, Alara?" "Oh, countless," she replied, her mind immediately conjuring images of valiant knights, forgotten kingdoms, and ancient magic. "But mostly stories of love and destiny, of quests for things unseen, yet deeply felt." She glanced at him, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "Like the crimson velvet, perhaps?" He turned to her then, his expression softening. "Perhaps exactly like that. The legend speaks of a flower, unique and vibrant, that blooms only under the rarest of conditions, and only when two fated souls are near. It's said to grant a single heartfelt wish, or to forever bind the hearts it touches." Alara listened intently, her historian's mind cataloging every detail. "My grandmother used to tell me stories. She said it was a symbol, not a literal flower, a metaphor for finding true love when you least expect it. Why not both?" Lion mused, his gaze returning to the horizon. "The world is full of wonders that defy simple explanation, and sometimes the most profound symbols are rooted in tangible beauty." He paused, then continued, a thoughtful note in his voice. "There's a celestial alignment, a rare conjunction of stars, due in a few days, The ancient texts suggest it's the only time the crimson velvet might bloom, and only within the sacred heart of the Viridian Vale. A shiver, not of cold but of pure enchantment, traced its way down Ilara's spine. A celestial alignment. It sounded like something ripped from the most romantic of her books. "And you truly believe in it?" she asked, almost breathlessly. Lian met her gaze again, his honey eyes twinkling. "I believe in the possibility of it. And more importantly, Ilara, I believe in hope. Don't you?" His question hung in the air, gentle yet profound. Hope. Huh. It was a fragile thing she'd guarded carefully, often hidden beneath layers of quiet routine. But now, sitting beside this charming man, heading towards an ancient mystery, hope felt like a fledgling bird taking flight within her chest. "I think," she said, her voice soft, "I'm beginning to." As the sun climbed higher, casting long, dancing shadows across the fields, their conversation flowed easily, like a meandering stream. Ilara found herself sharing snippets of her life, her days spent among dusty manuscripts in the quiet solitude of her garden. Lion, in turn, spoke of his travels, of the diverse peoples he'd met, and the breathtaking landscapes he'd witnessed. He was a cartographer by trade, he explained, which often led him to remote corners of the world, sketching maps of forgotten paths and uncharted territories. It was his work, he admitted, that had first led him to whispers of the crimson velvet and the ancient lore surrounding the Viridian Vale. "I've always chased the edges of the known world," he confessed, a wistful note in his voice. "But this feels different. Less about discovery, more about destiny." Ilara felt a curious warmth spread through her at his words. His sincerity was disarming, complementing his easy charm. She noticed the way his hands, strong and capable, held the reins with a gentle firmness, the way his profile, strong-jawed and thoughtful, was softened by the occasional crinkle around his eyes when he smiled. She found herself observing him with an interest that went beyond simple curiosity, a blossoming admiration that was as unexpected as this journey itself. By afternoon, the landscape had begun to change. The rolling hills gave way to denser forests, ancient trees with gnarled limbs reaching towards the sky like silent sentinels. The air grew cooler, carrying the rich, earthy scent of damp soil and moss. Sunlight filtered through the thick canopy in dappled patterns, painting the forest floor in shifting shades of emerald and gold. "We'll reach the village of Oakhaven by dusk," Lion informed her, pointing ahead to a faint plume of smoke rising above the trees. "It's the last settlement before the deeper parts of the Vale. We can find lodging there for the night." Oakhaven was a quaint, sleepy village nestled in a clearing, its cottages built of dark wood and stone, their windows glowing with warm, inviting light. The air was thick with the scent of wood smoke and baking bread. They found a small, cozy inn, its common room filled with the low hum of conversation and the clinking of tankards. After a simple but hearty meal of stew and fresh bread, Ilara and Lion settled by a crackling fireplace in a quiet corner. The warmth seeped into her bones, chasing away the chill of the evening. She felt a profound sense of peace, a feeling she hadn't realized she was missing until now. "It's beautiful here," she murmured, gazing into the dancing flames. "So different from home." "Every place holds its own kind of beauty," Lion replied, his voice soft, close beside her. "But the Vale, it has a special magic, the kind that whispers to your soul." They fell into a comfortable silence, punctuated only by the crackle of the fire and the distant murmurs of the inn. Ilara found herself stealing glances at Lion, his face illuminated by the firelight, his gaze thoughtful. She wondered about his past, about the dreams he chased, and what he truly hoped to find with the crimson velvet. "What would your wish be, Lion?" she asked, the question bubbling up unexpectedly. "If the legend is true, and you found the flower?" He turned to her, a faint smile playing on his lips. "A good question, one I've pondered often on my journeys. I suppose I'd wish for clarity, for a path that feels undeniably right, even when the way is shrouded." He looked into her eyes, his expression earnest. "And you, Ilara, what would you wish for?" Her heart gave a little flutter. She hadn't truly considered it beyond the initial, romantic allure of the legend. I think I'd wish for courage," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "To step beyond the familiar, to truly live the stories I've only read about." Lion reached out, his hand gently covering hers where it rested on her knee. His touch was warm, comforting, sending a delightful current through her. I think you already have more courage than you know, Alara. To embark on this journey with a stranger, to seek out something so wondrous, that takes a brave heart. His words, simple yet profound, resonated deeply within her. She looked at their joined hands, then up at his face, feeling a blush creep up her neck. The quiet ache in her heart was long gone, replaced by a burgeoning warmth, a sweet anticipation that had less to do with the crimson velvet and more with the man sitting beside her. It was a discovery as surprising as any ancient legend. The next morning they set off earlier, leaving Oakhaven behind as the first rays of sun pierced through the mist. The path grew narrower, winding deeper into the ancient forest. The trees here were grander, their bark covered in emerald moss, their branches laden with silver-green leaves that shimmered in the gentle breeze. Strange, fragrant flowers bloomed in sheltered nooks, their petals glowing with soft, ethereal hues Alara had never seen before. This was the threshold of the Viridian Vale, a place where nature itself seemed to hum with an otherworldly energy. As they journeyed, Lion pointed out various landmarks. A colossal, ancient oak whose roots spiraled into the earth like a forgotten temple. A waterfall that cascaded down a cliff face, its waters sparkling like liquid diamonds. He knew the names of the birds that sang in the canopy, and the wildflowers that dotted the forest floor, sharing his knowledge with a quiet enthusiasm that Alara found utterly captivating. She, in turn, spoke of the historical significance of similar natural wonders in the legends she'd read, drawing parallels that sparked lively discussions and shared laughter. They stopped for a midday meal by a clear, babbling brook, feasting on dried fruit, cheese, and fresh bread they'd purchased in Oakhaven. The air was cool and sweet, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. As Alara watched Lion expertly build a small fire to boil water for tea, she noticed the ease with which he moved, the quiet competence that belied his gentle demeanor. He seemed utterly at home in the wilderness, yet he was equally attentive to her comfort, ensuring she had the warmest spot by the fire and the softest piece of bread. My grandmother used to say the Vale has a spirit, Alara remarked, watching a dragonfly dart over the water, that it knows who belongs here and who doesn't. Lion looked up from stoking the fire, a thoughtful expression on his face. I believe that. Some places simply resonate with life, with ancient memories. And the Vale, it feels alive, as if every tree, every stone holds a story. He paused, then added, his voice a low rumble. I've certainly never felt more guided. His gaze lingered on her for a moment longer than necessary, and Alara felt a blush bloom on her cheeks. Was he implying what she thought he was implying? That Ashe was part of that guidance. Her heart fluttered like the dragonfly by the brook. Their journey continued, punctuated by moments of quiet camaraderie and shared wonder. The road grew increasingly challenging, turning into little more than a deer trail winding through dense foliage. Lian expertly navigated the carriage, his steady hands guiding the horses with practiced ease. At one point, a sudden localized downpour swept over them, drenching them to the bone within minutes. They quickly sought shelter under the sprawling branches of a colossal redwood, its ancient leaves providing a surprisingly effective shield. Huddled together beneath the tree, the rhythmic drumming of rain on leaves creating a soothing symphony, Alara shivered, less from cold and more from the sudden intimacy of their shared predicament. Lian, noticing her chill, swiftly shrugged off his own damp cloak and draped it around her shoulders. The fabric, though wet, still held the faint, comforting scent of him. A mix of wood smoke, fresh air, and something uniquely Lion. Thank you, she murmured, pulling the cloak tighter around her, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the garment itself. We'll be out of this soon, he assured her, his voice gentle. He reached out, brushing a stray, damp strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering for a brief, electric moment. The Vale likes to test its visitors, perhaps, to see if they truly deserve its secrets. Alara looked into his honey-colored eyes, rain glistening on his lashes, and felt a profound sense of connection. The world outside their makeshift shelter seemed to recede, leaving only the two of them, the rhythmic rain, and the unspoken understanding that was growing between them like a tender sapling. She realized then that the adventure, the quest for the crimson velvet, had already begun to weave its magic, not just in the fantastical pursuit, but in the unfolding of her own heart. As quickly as it had arrived, the rain subsided, leaving the forest sparkling and fresh. The air was crisp, carrying the renewed scent of damp earth and blooming life. They continued their journey, their spirits undampened by the brief downpour, feeling even more connected than before. In the late afternoon, they stumbled upon a small, secluded clearing. In its center stood a tiny, moss-covered cottage, smoke curling lazily from its chimney. A cheerful, plump woman with rosy cheeks and a cascade of silver braids sat on a porch swing, humming a folk tune as she shelled peas into a wooden bowl. She looked up as they approached, her eyes as blue as forget-me-nots, twinkling with immediate warmth. "Well, well, what have we here?" she called out, her voice surprisingly robust. "Lost travelers, or seekers of the Vale's oldest secrets." Lian dismounted, offering Alara his hand. "A bit of both, perhaps, good madam. We're seeking the heart of the Viridian Vale. My name is Lian, and this is Alara." The woman's smile widened. "Welcome, welcome. I am Maeve. Not many pass this way these days, especially not with such purpose in their eyes. Come, rest a spell. The Vale can be a tricky mistress." Maeve proved to be a fount of local knowledge, her cottage a haven of warmth and hospitality. Over cups of fragrant herbal tea and warm berry scones, she shared tales of the Vale, weaving ancient legends with practical advice on navigating its paths. She spoke of the Crimson Velvet, too, not as a fanciful myth, but as a tangible, living wonder, her eyes softening with reverence. "The velvet," Maeve said, stirring her tea slowly. "It's more than just a flower. It's a reflection. It shows you what you truly seek and what you're truly ready for. It only blooms, they say, when two hearts beat in perfect harmony, aligned not just with each other, but with the very pulse of the Vale itself." She looked from Lian to Alara, a knowing glint in her eyes. "And it's a rare sight indeed, requires a rare kind of alignment, both within and without." Her words resonated deeply with Alara, touching upon the growing harmony she felt with Lian. It wasn't just the destination, but the journey and the company that was making her heart sing. As dusk settled, painting the sky in hues of fiery orange and soft lavender, Maeve offered them her spare room, a small but cozy space with a feather bed and a window overlooking a whispering grove of ancient trees. Before they retired, Maeve pressed a small, intricately carved wooden charm into Alara's hand. "For safe passage, child," she whispered, her gaze warm and maternal. "And for clarity of heart. The Vale will guide you, if you listen closely." Alara thanked her, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. The charm, smooth and warm against her palm, felt like a small, tangible piece of the magic of the Vale. Later, as she lay in the soft bed, listening to the gentle chirping of crickets outside and the distant hoot of an owl, Alara reflected on the day. Every step of the journey, every shared glance, every soft word exchanged with Lian, had felt like a piece of a puzzle falling into place. The Viridian Vale wasn't just a place on a map. It was a living, breathing entity, and it was drawing her closer not just to a mythical flower, but to a connection she hadn't dared to dream of. The quiet ache in her heart was a distant memory. In its place was a vibrant, hopeful hum, a melody composed of anticipation for the Crimson Velvet, yes, but even more so, for the blossoming feelings she held for Lian. She wondered if he felt it too, this subtle, yet undeniable pull between them. The legend of the Crimson Velvet was said to be about love, about destiny. And as she drifted off to sleep, Alara felt a stirring certainty that her own destiny, once a blank page, was now being written with vibrant crimson hues. The true heart of the Viridian Vale lay ahead, shrouded in ancient mystery, and Alara felt ready, truly ready, to discover whatever wonders it held, with Lian by her side. The morning light filtered through the canopy of ancient trees, painting the forest floor in dappled gold and emerald. Alara stretched on her makeshift bed of moss and ferns, a soft sigh escaping her lips. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine, a symphony of birdsong already filling the air. She opened her eyes to find Lian already stirring, meticulously packing his small satchel. His profile, framed by the gentle morning light, was strong and thoughtful, a stray lock of dark hair falling across his brow. He looked up, meeting her gaze with a soft smile that sent a familiar warmth blossoming in her chest. "Good morning, Alara. Ready for the heart of the Vale?" As I'll ever be, she replied, her voice still a little husky with sleep. She sat up, running a hand through her tangled hair. It feels different today. The air hums with something. Leon nodded, his eyes scanning the dense foliage ahead. A sense of anticipation. The legends say the Viridian Vale is not just a place, but a living entity, a guardian of ancient secrets. We're about to step into its truest embrace. After a simple breakfast of dried fruit and nuts, they set off, the forest immediately growing denser, the trees taller, their branches intertwining to form a natural cathedral. Sunlight struggled to penetrate, casting the path in an ethereal twilight. The ground beneath their feet became softer, covered in a thick carpet of moss and fallen leaves, muffling their footsteps. A profound quiet settled around them, broken only by the rustle of their clothes and the occasional distant call of an unknown bird. Ilara felt a thrill of wonder mingled with a touch of apprehension. This was unlike any forest she had ever seen. The trees themselves seemed imbued with an ancient wisdom, their gnarled trunks etched with patterns that resembled forgotten runes. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the cool, rough bark of an oak, feeling a faint tremor beneath her touch, as if the tree itself breathed. Leon walked slightly ahead, his movements fluid and graceful, his senses attuned to every nuance of their surroundings. He paused often, examining a particular cluster of flowers, a unique stone, or the direction of a faint breeze. The legends speak of a path that reveals itself only to those who seek with an open heart, he murmured, glancing back at her. It's not about brute force or maps, but about intuition. Ilara nodded, understanding. She found herself instinctively trusting him, following his lead without question. Her own intuition, once a quiet whisper, seemed to be growing stronger in this place, humming in harmony with the veil itself. She noticed details she might have otherwise missed, a faint luminescence on certain mushrooms, a delicate spiderweb shimmering with dew, like a curtain of pearls, the subtle shift in the forest's scent from earthy pine to something sweeter, more floral. As they ventured deeper, the forest began to transform. The trees, though still ancient, grew stranger, their leaves a deeper, almost iridescent green, some with streaks of crimson or violet. Flowers bloomed in impossible shades, their petals unfurling in intricate patterns that seemed to defy natural symmetry. Waterfalls, thin as silk ribbons, cascaded down moss-covered rocks, feeding into crystal-clear streams that meandered through groves of silver-barked trees. They came to a clearing where a massive, gnarled tree stood at its center, its trunk wider than Ilara's small cottage, its branches reaching skyward like supplicating arms. Embedded in its bark, glowing with a soft inner light, were what appeared to be polished stones, each a different color: emerald, sapphire, amethyst, and ruby. The whispering oak, Lion breathed, his voice hushed with reverence. It's said to be one of the Vale's oldest guardians. He approached it cautiously, placing a hand gently on its rough bark. It holds memories, echoes of those who have passed this way before. Ilara felt drawn to it, a strange compulsion urging her forward. She reached out, mirroring Lion's gesture, and as her fingers made contact with the ancient wood, a faint warmth spread through her palm. A soft, almost inaudible hum vibrated through the air, and for a moment she felt a fleeting connection, a whisper of countless ages, of joy and sorrow, of journeys undertaken and completed. It was overwhelming yet comforting, like being embraced by time itself. When she pulled her hand away, Leon was watching her, his eyes filled with a knowing tenderness. "Did you feel it?" "1,000 stories," she whispered, a little breathless. "And a sense of peace, as if it welcomes us." They continued, guided by the subtle shifts in the landscape, the increasing vibrancy of the colors, the ever-present, gentle hum in the air. The path, though winding, never felt lost. It felt deliberate, as if the veil itself was leading them. Hours melted into a timeless journey. They stopped by a clear pool fed by a waterfall, its waters shimmering with an ethereal glow. Lion unpacked their remaining provisions, and they shared a quiet meal, the only sounds the splash of the water and the gentle rustle of leaves. Ilara found herself studying Lion as he ate, the way his dark hair fell across his brow, the strength in his hands as he broke a piece of bread, the thoughtful curve of his lips. He was so utterly himself, so grounded, and yet there was a deep well of mystery in his eyes that only made her want to understand him more. He caught her gaze, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Something on your mind, Alara?" She felt a blush creep up her neck. "Just wondering about the legend. The crimson velvet? Do you think it's a real artifact, or something more symbolic?" Lion took a moment to consider, his gaze distant, lost in thought. "The legends vary. Some speak of a tapestry, woven with threads of destiny. Others, of a flower that blooms only once in a century, its petals the color of deepest love. And still others, of a connection, a bond between two souls, that burns with that same brilliant crimson fire. I believe it's all of those things, and none of them entirely." "Why, I believe it's all of those things, and none of them entirely." He met her eyes, a profound intensity in his gaze. "Perhaps the crimson velvet isn't something one finds, but something one realizes." His words resonated deeply with Alara, stirring the quiet certainty she'd felt the night before. She felt it again now, that undeniable pull, like a silken thread tightening around her heart, connecting her to him. The air around them seemed to shimmer, the waterfall behind them catching the light in 1,000 sparkling facets. They pushed onward, the forest now thinning slightly, revealing glimpses of a vast open space ahead. The air grew warmer, infused with the heady scent of 1,000 blossoms. As they broke through the last line of trees, Alara gasped. Before them lay not a clearing but a garden, unlike anything she could have imagined. It stretched as far as the eye could see, a riot of color and fragrance. Flowers of every conceivable shade bloomed in wild abandon, their petals soft as velvet, vibrant as jewels. Some glowed with an inner luminescence, casting a gentle light on the path that wound through them. Butterflies with wings like stained glass fluttered between the blossoms, and tiny iridescent birds flitted from branch to branch of the low, flowering shrubs. In the very center of this breathtaking garden, rising above the blossoms like a silent sentinel, was a structure. It wasn't a building, but rather a series of graceful, arching trellises made of a dark, polished wood, intricately carved with swirling patterns and symbols Alara couldn't quite decipher. Vines heavy with blossoms of deepest crimson twined around these trellises, forming a living canopy that glowed with an almost otherworldly light. "The heart of the Viridian Vale," Leon whispered, his voice filled with awe. "The garden of eternal bloom." Alara could only stare, her heart swelling with a mixture of wonder and profound peace. It was more beautiful than any dream. The air here was alive, vibrant with an energy that vibrated through her very bones, a sensation of pure, unadulterated joy. They walked slowly into the garden, the soft petals brushing against their legs. The path, paved with smooth, luminescent stones, wound towards the central structure. As they drew closer, Alara noticed that the crimson blossoms on the trellises weren't just red. They were a rich, deep hue, almost black in their intensity, yet radiating a warmth that pulsed like a living heart. And within the heart of each blossom, a tiny golden ember seemed to glow. "Crimson velvet," Alara breathed, the words barely a whisper. This wasn't a tapestry, or a single flower, but an entire living embodiment of the legend. Leon reached out, his fingers gently touching one of the petals. "It's even more magnificent than the tales describe. These flowers, they are said to bloom only in places of profound love, places where two souls are meant to intertwine." He looked at her then, his eyes dark and intense, reflecting the crimson glow. "Each petal holds a memory, a story of love found, love lost, love rekindled." They reached the base of the trellises, which formed a circular arbor, creating a small, intimate space within the garden. A single, smooth stone bench curved along its inner wall, perfectly inviting. They sat down, side by side, enveloped by the fragrant air and the soft, pulsing light of the crimson blossoms. Alara felt an overwhelming sense of rightness, of belonging. This place, this moment, felt like the culmination of everything she had unknowingly sought. She turned to Lion, her heart full. "It's magical. It feels like this place remembers everything, knows everything." "It does," Liam confirmed, his voice soft. "It's a sanctuary for the heart, a testament to enduring love." He reached for her hand, his fingers gently intertwining with hers. His touch sent a shiver through her, a warm electric current that flowed directly to her soul. The legends also say that if two people stand here, open to its magic, the crimson velvet will show them their truth. He didn't elaborate, but Alara understood. Her gaze drifted to the nearest cluster of crimson blossoms, their deep hues seeming to deepen even further, to pulse with an almost conscious rhythm. She felt a subtle shift in the air, a gentle vibration that seemed to emanate from the flowers themselves. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, a soft, ethereal mist began to rise from the ground, swirling around them, not cold, but warm and fragrant. It thickened, becoming translucent, and within its depths, images began to form. Alara gasped softly. She saw flashes, not of her own memories, but of moments she had never experienced, yet felt deeply familiar. She saw a young couple, centuries ago, their faces filled with desperate longing, reaching for each other across a vast chasm. Then another scene. A pair of hands weathered by time, tending a garden, intertwined in a gesture of quiet devotion. Each image was imbued with a profound sense of love, of connection, of destiny unfolding. She saw herself, younger, standing before her easel, painting with fierce determination, yet a subtle yearning in her eyes, a sense of something missing. Then, the vision shifted. She saw Lion, alone, gazing out at a distant horizon, a quiet strength about him, but also a hint of solitude. And then the images shifted again, focusing on them, Alara and Lian. She saw their first meeting in the bustling market, the immediate spark of recognition. She saw their journey through the whispering woods, their quiet conversations by the campfire, the shared laughter, the growing comfort of their companionship. She saw Lion's hand reaching out to steady her, her hand unconsciously seeking his. She saw the subtle glances, the unspoken understanding, the growing warmth that had blossomed between them with each passing day. The images weren't just visual, they were imbued with emotions, with sensations. She felt the gentle brush of his arm against hers, the comforting presence of his hand in hers, the profound sense of safety and belonging that blossomed whenever he was near. She felt the echoes of her own dawning feelings, the growing certainty that this man, Lion, was more than just a companion on a quest. He was becoming integral to her very being. The mist swirled, and the images coalesced into one powerful moment. Lion standing before her, his eyes filled with a tenderness that made her heart ache, his hand reaching for her face, his thumb gently stroking her cheek. And in that moment, she felt an absolute, undeniable surge of love, profound and encompassing, for him. It wasn't a future vision but an affirmation of the present, a recognition of what had been steadily growing between them, now unveiled and undeniable. When the mist finally dissipated, leaving only the soft glow of the crimson blossoms, Alara found herself trembling slightly. She looked at Lion, her eyes wide, her heart pounding. He was looking at her too, his hand still gently holding hers, his gaze filled with the same profound emotion that mirrored her own. "You saw it too," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He nodded, his thumb tracing slow circles on the back of her hand. "More than saw, Alara. I felt it, everything. Our journey, our shared moments, the path that brought us here, and the path that lies ahead." His voice was a low rumble, rich with emotion. The crimson velvet, it speaks of destined connections. It doesn't create them, but reveals them. Alara felt a tear trace a path down her cheek, but it was a tear of pure joy. All her life she had sought meaning, sought purpose, and now, in this magical garden, with this extraordinary man beside her, she felt it profoundly. It wasn't just about finding ancient treasures or uncovering forgotten lore. It was about finding a treasure within herself, a love she hadn't known she was capable of, reflected in the eyes of another. "Lian," she began, but the word caught in her throat. She didn't know what to say, how to express the vastness of what she felt. He gently squeezed her hand, his gaze unwavering. "Alara," he said, his voice soft, yet firm. "From the moment I saw you in the market, there was something, an echo, a resonance. I didn't understand it then, but it pulled me. And with every step we've taken together, with every shared smile, every quiet moment, it has only grown stronger. This feeling, it is undeniable. He shifted on the bench, turning to face her more fully. His free hand reached up, gently cupping her jaw, his thumb stroking her skin with infinite tenderness. His eyes, usually so guarded, were now completely open, vulnerable, filled with a depth of emotion that took her breath away. "Ilara," he said again, his voice barely a whisper, "I am falling in love with you." The words, spoken aloud, were like a balm to her soul, a confirmation of every hope, every unspoken prayer. A joyful sob escaped her lips. "Oh, Leon," she breathed, her own hand reaching up to cover his on her cheek. I think I already am with you." A slow, tender smile spread across his face, lighting up his eyes like the golden embers within the crimson blossoms. He leaned closer, his gaze dropping to her lips, seeking permission. Ilara didn't hesitate. She closed her eyes, her heart soaring, and leaned into his touch, into the profound rightness of the moment. His lips met hers, soft and hesitant at first, a gentle exploration. Then, as she responded, a tremor went through him, and the kiss deepened, becoming more assured, more fervent. It was a kiss that spoke of unspoken desires, of shared journeys, of destined paths finally converging. It was a kiss that tasted of ancient magic and burgeoning hope, of comfort and exhilarating promise. It was everything she had ever longed for, a silent symphony of connection that resonated with the very heart of the Viridian Vale. When they finally broke apart, breathless, their foreheads rested against each other, their eyes still closed, Ilara felt a profound sense of peace settle over her, a quiet contentment that hummed in her veins. Her destiny, once a blank page, was now not just being written in crimson hues, but was unfolding with a beauty she could barely comprehend, hand in hand with the man who held her heart. Leon pulled back slightly, his eyes sparkling with unshed emotion. "This place, it truly does reveal all," he murmured, his voice still a little rough with feeling. He looked around the tranquil arbor, at the glowing crimson blossoms. "The crimson velvet isn't just about love, Ilara. It's about truth. About seeing past illusions, past doubts, to the core of what truly matters." Ilara nodded, still feeling the lingering warmth of his kiss, the electric current of their connection. "And it showed us ours." She squeezed his hand. "But what now, Lion? The legends? Do they speak of what comes after the revelation?" He smiled, a gentle, knowing smile that melted her heart. "The legends say that once the truth is seen, the path ahead becomes clearer, though not always simpler. The true work of love begins not in its discovery, but in its nurture. The veil has offered us its wisdom, its blessing. Now, it's up to us to carry that forward." He rose, pulling her gently to her feet. They stood there, hand in hand, in the heart of the garden of eternal bloom, surrounded by the living crimson velvet, bathed in its warm, pulsing light. The air thrummed with a new energy, a quiet promise. "We should spend the night here," Lion suggested, his gaze sweeping over the magical garden. "Rest, absorb its peace. And in the morning, we can decide our next steps." Ilara leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling completely safe, completely cherished. "That sounds perfect," she whispered. The mysteries of the Viridian Vale were far from fully explored, its ancient secrets perhaps only just beginning to reveal themselves. But whatever lay ahead, Ilara knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would face it with Lion, her heart open, ready to write the next vibrant chapter of their shared destiny. The world felt vast and full of possibility, no longer daunting, but an adventure she was eager to embark upon, with love as her guiding star. The crimson hues of their journey had just begun to deepen, promising a future as rich and beautiful as the garden itself. The crimson hues of their journey had just begun to deepen, promising a future as rich and beautiful as the garden itself. Leon's hand found Ilara's, his fingers intertwining with hers in a silent promise. The air around them shimmered with unspoken dreams, a tapestry woven from shared glances, and the quiet understanding that had blossomed between them. The days that followed were a testament to the magic they had found. Ilara spent her mornings sketching amidst the dew-kissed petals, capturing the fleeting light on a rose or the intricate pattern of a fern. Leon, in turn, would often find her, bringing her a cup of chamomile tea or a freshly picked bloom, their conversations flowing as naturally as the stream that wound through the garden. He spoke of the history of the estate, of the generations who had tended these grounds, and of his own aspirations to expand the arboretum, to introduce new species, to make the garden a sanctuary not just for beauty, but for biodiversity. Ilara listened, captivated, her heart swelling with admiration for his vision and dedication. It was during one of these talks, as they sat beneath the ancient wisteria arbor, its lavender blossoms showering them like confetti, that Lion first hinted at the deeper layers of his life. "This garden," he began, tracing a pattern on her palm. "It's more than just a passion project for me, Ilara. It is a legacy. My family has owned these lands for centuries. We are the stewards of this place." Ilara looked at him, surprised. She had always assumed Lion was simply a dedicated gardener, perhaps with independent means, but the weight in his voice suggested something more profound. "A legacy?" she prompted softly. He nodded, his gaze distant for a moment, then returning to her, filled with a gentle honesty. "My full name is Lion Reese Devereaux. My family holds a rather traditional position in the community. They expect a certain path for their eldest son. I've always loved the garden, but for a long time I felt the weight of expectation more than the joy of cultivation." He paused, a faint shadow crossing his features. "My parents. They're wonderful people, but they've always had a clear idea of what my future should look like. And it didn't always include a free-spirited artist from afar." He smiled wryly, but his eyes held a flicker of apprehension. "I've kept my distance somewhat, immersing myself here, but the time is coming when I can no longer avoid my responsibilities." Ilara's breath hitched. A Devereaux. The name resonated with quiet importance, hinting at a world far removed from her bohemian art studio. She felt a pang of uncertainty. Could she, an artist who followed her muse wherever it led, truly fit into such a structured world? Would his family approve of her? The thought was daunting, but then she looked at Lion, at the genuine affection in his eyes, and her fears began to recede. Their love had been a guiding star through her own journey of self-discovery. Surely it could guide them through this, too. "What kind of responsibilities?" she asked, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "The estate extends far beyond these gardens," Leon explained. "There are farms, woodlands, community projects, and a certain expectation to marry well, to secure the lineage." He squeezed her hand, his gaze intense. "I've never been interested in that, not until now. Now I can't imagine securing a future without you by my side, Ilara." His words were a balm, soothing the nascent anxieties. Ilara felt a wave of profound love and gratitude wash over her. He was choosing Hare. "And your parents?" she asked, a practical concern surfacing. Leon sighed. "They're coming to visit next week. I've told them about you, of course. Not everything, but enough to pique their curiosity. They're traditional, as I said, but they are also fair. I want you to meet them. I want them to see what I see in you." Ilara's stomach did a nervous flip, but she met his gaze with determination. "Then I will," she said, her voice firm. "I'll be here, and I'll be myself." The week leading up to the Devereaux visit was a whirlwind of anticipation and quiet reassurance. Leon was attentive, sensing her nervousness, always ready with a comforting touch or a shared laugh. He introduced her to more of the estate, to the bustling farms and the quiet elegance of the main house, a grand ivy-clad structure that felt steeped in history. Ilara found inspiration everywhere, sketching the ancient oak trees that dotted the landscape, the weathered stone walls, and even the curious faces of the farm animals. When Mr. and Mrs. Devereaux arrived, Ilara was in the studio, putting the finishing touches on a vibrant watercolor of the garden's oldest rosebush. Leon had asked her to wear something comfortable, something that reflected her artistic spirit. She had chosen a flowing linen dress the color of spring moss, her hair tied back with a simple ribbon. Lion met them at the entrance, a picture of quiet confidence. He led them through the elegant drawing room, past imposing portraits of ancestors, and finally to the sunlit studio where Ilara stood amidst her canvases. Mrs. Devereaux, a regal woman with kind, intelligent eyes, assessed Ilara with a gentle smile. Mr. Devereaux, a man of quiet authority, nodded politely. Father, this is Ilara Thorne," Lion said, his hand resting lightly on Ilara's back, a gesture of quiet possession that filled Ilara with warmth. "Ilara, my parents, Eleanor and Arthur." Ilara curtsied gracefully, a gesture that surprised even herself, feeling a strange blend of nervousness and an unexpected sense of belonging. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you," she said, her voice clear. The initial conversation was a polite dance of questions and answers. Ilara spoke of her art, her love for the garden, and her journey. She found herself relaxing under the genuine interest in Eleanor's eyes. Arthur, though more reserved, listened intently, his gaze lingering on her artwork. It was during a tour of the garden, led by Lion, that the true connection began to form. Ilara, speaking with passion and knowledge, pointed out the subtle shifts in light on the petals, the intricate ecosystems within the pond, and the poetic beauty of the ancient trees. She spoke not just of aesthetics, but of the life and soul of the garden, mirroring Lion's own deep reverence. "The way you see it," Eleanor remarked, stopping before a cluster of rare orchids, "it's almost as if you understand its language." Ilara smiled. "It speaks to me, Mrs. Devereaux. Each flower, each leaf, tells a story." Arthur, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. "Lion has always had a profound connection to these grounds. It seems he's found someone who shares that rare gift." He looked at Ilara, a hint of approval in his eyes. "You bring a new perspective, Miss Thorne, a new vision." That evening, over a dinner of garden-fresh produce and lively conversation, the last remnants of Ilara's apprehension dissipated. She spoke of her dream to create an art retreat within the estate, where artists could draw inspiration from the natural beauty, fostering creativity and a deeper appreciation for the land. Lion's eyes shone with pride, and his parents listened with growing fascination. "A gallery space, perhaps?" Eleanor mused, her eyes sparkling. "We have an old conservatory that could be repurposed." Arthur nodded thoughtfully. "It would certainly bring new life to the estate, Lion, a way to share its beauty with the world beyond just horticulture." The next few days were a blur of shared ideas, laughter, and a growing sense of family. Eleanor and Ilara discovered a mutual love for antique textiles, and Arthur found himself drawn to Ilara's vibrant sketches, seeing the garden anew through her eyes. The secrets Lion had hinted at were not dark burdens, but layers of a rich heritage, and Ilara, with her open heart and artistic spirit, was proving to be the perfect companion to help him embrace them fully. One crisp autumn afternoon, as the leaves began to turn crimson and gold, mirroring the deepening hues of their love, Lion led Ilara to a secluded spot in the ancient arboretum. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, painting dappled patterns on the mossy ground. He knelt before her, a small velvet box in his hand, his eyes shimmering with profound emotion. "Ilara," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "my life felt beautiful before you, but incomplete. You've shown me how to truly see, how to truly live, how to truly love. You are my guiding star, my muse, my partner in every dream. This garden, this legacy, my future. It all means nothing without you." He opened the box to reveal a ring, not extravagant, but elegant, its central stone a rare, deep green peridot, reminiscent of the garden's heart. "Will you do me the honor, Ilara Thorne, of becoming my wife and helping me write the most vibrant chapter of our shared destiny?" Tears welled in Ilara's eyes, a joyful cascade. This was it, the culmination of her journey, the beginning of an even grander adventure. "Yes, Lion," she whispered, her voice choked with happiness. 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, its cool weight a tangible promise. Then he rose, pulling her into a tender embrace, their lips meeting in a kiss that sealed their vows under the watchful eyes of the ancient trees. Their wedding was a celebration of nature and art, held in the heart of the blooming garden, with Eleanor's antique lace and Ilara's vibrant floral arrangements creating a breathtaking tapestry of beauty. Ilara, radiant in a gown the color of moonlight, walked down an aisle strewn with petals, her heart overflowing. As the years unfolded, Ilara and Lion nurtured their love and their shared vision. The Devereaux estate flourished, not just as a meticulously tended garden, but as a vibrant hub of creativity and connection. Ilara's art retreat became renowned, drawing artists from across the globe, each leaving a piece of their inspiration behind, enriching the estate's spirit. The old conservatory transformed into a gallery, displayed not only Ilara's evocative pieces, but also the works of countless other talents. Lion, with Ilara by his side, found renewed purpose in his legacy. Together, They championed sustainable practices, expanded the arboretum with rare species, and ensured the estate remained a haven for both nature and the human spirit. Their children, a boy with Lion's quiet strength and a girl with Alara's artistic flair, grew up running through the gardens, their laughter echoing amongst the blossoms, learning the stories whispered by the wind through the leaves. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, Lion and Alara would walk through their beloved garden, hand in hand. The crimson hues of their journey had indeed deepened, revealing a future far richer and more beautiful than they could have ever imagined. It was a future built on love, on shared dreams, and on the quiet magic of a garden that had brought two souls together, intertwining their destinies into an exquisite masterpiece of life and love, forever blooming.